Hi there, Trish here with Butterfly Dreams Alliance, a small nonprofit in Breeze, Illinois, helping those affected by abuse, violence, sexual harm, and human trafficking. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and BDA would like to invite you to join our virtual town hall and vigil, which we're going to hold via Zoom on October 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. We have a great list of panelists, all going to be open for your questions, so please watch our Facebook event page for more information and the link to join the conversation live. It's really important to realize that this year, 2020, is unlike any other. The mandatory quarantines and the exacerbated job loss has created such a toxicity of stress factors that are far worse than what we've seen probably in the past century. This year, our loved ones, our neighbors, and especially our kids are at a much higher risk than some of us can probably really imagine. Maybe you think it can't be that bad. Certainly, the police or someone would be involved if there was any real problem. Maybe you hear people say, sure, they fight with each other. I've heard it go on for years. Maybe you hear local law enforcement say, sure, we get called to that house 4 or 5 times a year, maybe more. Maybe you've even heard teachers or school administrators say, sure, I've noticed some changes in this student. They seem distant. They don't finish their homework. Their appearance and their behavior have changed. They really seem easily agitated, and often they act out in class. These are typically just some of the comments that you hear from family, friends, law enforcement, neighbors, educators, when in fact all of them are witnessing basic warning signs of some type of abuse or struggle inside that person's life. But most of us aren't really sure if we should get involved. As a child who grew up living in constant fear, who then became a woman, a mother, and a wife, I desperately walked on eggshells each and every day and was actually terrified of that one person who said, I love you to me every single night. Decades of my adult life were spent silently praying for someone to help me find a way out, not just for me, but more importantly, to change the environment for my children. Domestic violence isn't just about the direct violence in the relationship. It involves completely dominating your partner's life. It's verbal insults, accusations, and degradation. It's threats of harm to other persons or persons around you, your employer, your co-workers, maybe even your pets. It's blaming and shaming victims to all others so that the abuser can make themselves seem perfect. This is all a tactic to keep their victims in their control and ensure that neighbors and family and schools and even law enforcement stay out of the family business. Abusers and their victims often suffer from many types of emotional traumas and behaviors. Maybe they act out in anger. Maybe they get depressed. Maybe they've got severe anxiety. They may react in outbursts of rage, maybe punch walls, throw things around, make threats with weapons, suffer substance abuse problems, or their own long-term mental illness, which is, in fact, trauma-related behaviors and triggers. Domestic violence can lead to a destructive future and a learned tolerance of harm that just might become the only normal that the children inside that home ever learn. It leaves us vulnerable to other abusers. It causes kids to be lured into other dangerous or risk-taking behaviors, internet meetups, inappropriate pictures or interactions with online predators. Perhaps they learn to use drugs, alcohol, cutting, and eating problems as a coping strategy to mask what their true suffering is doing to them. We don't have to feel helpless in these situations. Today, there are more resources of help than ever before. There is rebuilding and support for recovery. There's education and training for professionals. There is always something we can do when we suspect possible harm or struggles inside a family. First of all, we have to recognize changes and address them directly. If it's a family or a friend, you can approach them with, as someone who cares about you, can I ask if things are okay? I've noticed a few things that make me a little concerned. Is there anything I can do? Or would you like to talk to me or talk to someone else about what's happening? For law enforcement, children's services, and advocates, what do the adults say about what's happening in the home? More importantly, what do the children say? What did they see or hear in the heated moments? Has anyone made any threats, pulled a weapon, or caused any direct harm? How long has all of this been happening? Maybe you might even do an adverse childhood experience evaluation known as the ACE score. Maybe you need to provide the victims with a lethality assessment to give them a real inside look at the risk of their relationship. Either of these tools can be found on the internet and are quite useful to help give victims a proven perspective about what's really happening and just how much they are minimizing the actual level of harm. I commonly use both of these assessments when I talk with victims of violence or sexual harm. The ACE score represents their past, what types of fears and traumas they've experienced that might cause them to believe things really aren't that bad. The lethality assessment gives a look into the relationship or the offender's actions, allows victims to see just how dangerous things really are and how they might be escalating. This assessment should always be provided in domestic violence and also provide them with hotline numbers and local responding advocacy services. Educators, you play such an important role in your students' life. You see them day after day. So other than parents and siblings, you likely interact with them more than any other person. When you see a collective change in a student, you can help by first trying to build a little closer circle of trust with that student. List your concerns: late or incomplete homework, changes in appearance, signs of neglect, anger, bullying, or shutting down completely, isolating themselves from their friends, or just simply being constantly distant. You can take your list and ask other teachers who associate with that student if they've noticed any changes. You can team up on behalf of that student. Take your concerns to school social workers and administration. If you submit a report to Children's Services, please take the time to explain it to the student. Remember that the fear of DCFS, Children's Services, and law enforcement are two big factors of abuse because it is always the offender's typical behavior to threaten their victims that law enforcement will remove them, that Children's Services will remove them, that they will never see their family again, that they are the ones who are wrong. So be gentle and explain that these services are there to make sure they are safe. Help them understand that it might be a little bit scary, but it's important to get help so they and their families can heal and get better. Community members can help by being vigilant, especially for the children in your neighborhood. You might not see the children for days, But when you do, something seems different about them. You hear fighting, but not sure if someone is being hurt. You can always call for a well check and report what's happening. Remember that only a few will actually be privy to the abuse itself or ever witness an act of harm. What you see from a distance is just the outside layers of what might probably be something much worse when it's behind closed doors. As we speak out across the nation today for equality and safety for all persons, we as a society must choose to do the right thing when we suspect an abusive or a violent situation. We must realize that in all the protests for our human rights, we cannot dismiss those who suffer in these types of environments. Domestic violence changes all of those in the family. So in rebuilding and supporting to keep family first intact, we will have to help victims feel safe today, but we will also have to help them reclaim their own identity and rebuild their dreams for an independent, sustainable, and productively positive direction forward. When we choose to do nothing, when we choose to tolerate the harm and ignore the suffering of others, this is when we give power to the generational trauma and harmful behaviors that have existed throughout human history. All things are possible, and you really can make a difference. But first, you have to become part of the equation. I'd like to thank you for watching this little video. Please visit thehotline.org, www.thehotline.org, for 24/7 crisis support across the country for domestic violence victims and information. You can find out more about Butterfly Dreams Alliance and the different topics we are here to help change by visiting our website at www.butterflydreamsalliance.org. Abuse, violence, sexual harm, and human trafficking are all power and control over another human being. You can give that person back at least some of their power when you stand with them, when you acknowledge them, ensure their rights to have a safe home while we help others heal from past trauma to be more positive parents for their own children. We all really have the power to do something. You just might be the hero that changes the direction and helps heal the trauma. That won't only create a new life for that person, but it creates a ripple effect of goodness that will affect them for generations to come. My name is Trish McKnight, CEO and founder of Butterfly Dreams Alliance NFP. Advocate, author, survivor, speaker, and support resource for anyone in harm's way. We are here to help, and we want you to believe that you can get help too. Thank you.